Great. Okay. Shruthi, can you please confirm again that you can hear me well? You can see my camera and screen.
Yes, all good. All good, Ronan.
Awesome. Okay, let's start. Good morning or good evening to all, and welcome to the Data-Driven Community virtual meeting. Let's start with a few words about the Data-Driven Community. For more information, simply check the community website. I will add the link in the chat in a few minutes. If you are fast enough, you can scan the QR as well and go there during the opening of the meeting. When you go to the main page of the website, you can scroll a bit and you will see the community upcoming events. On the left side of the page, you can notice the information about the Future Data-Driven Summit. This is an annual joint conference we are leading with multiple data platform user group partners. This year, the conference will not run. We are taking a pause. And we assume that next year you can see it again. On the second branch of the activity, on the right side of the page, you can notice the weekly meetings of the Cloud Data-Driven User Group, like today. And here you can follow our next weekly meetings. Now, this is a good point to mention. A lot of you came here from Meetup. Some of you came here from Eventbrite or other registration interfaces that we are using. My recommendation, follow the website. The website should be updated at all time. Sometimes we have activities that are done through the Meetup. Sometimes they are done through Eventbrite. Sometimes we have registration through a custom form or a Microsoft form or whatever. The website will take you to the right place always. So you are more than welcome to contact any of the community board members if you have any questions. We have Jen Joseph, he's here in the meeting as well. He is the founder and co-administrator of the community. We have Defti Gugori, she is a moderator and event organizer. And myself, my name is Ronen Orieli. I'm working as a senior consultant in the field of data platform and architecture of enterprise level systems. I'm the second co-administrator of the data-driven community, and I will be hosting the session today. Together, we are here to help and serve the data platform community, and feel free to contact us after and between meetings and before meetings. During the session today, we disable the chat. Instead, you can use the Q&A feature for questions and discussion. Notice the Q&A called Q&A, but once you go there, you have an option to post a question or discussions. Please note, this is important to remember, Teams does not automatically refresh the Q&A feed. It's a known issue. It's not like the chat. So all you need to remember is to manually refresh your Q&A panel. How you do it? You can simply close it and open again, or toggle between the option of filter, like moving between all and my post. It will refresh the content as well. Be sure to check the Q&A panel often. The discussion and links that are shared by your peers are just important as the main slide, and provide a lot of extra value to the meeting. You are also welcome to use reactions. Personally, this is something that I like a lot. It doesn't interfere with the course of the meeting. You can use it now just to see how it feels and how it looks. If you hear something that you love, like, or you want to clap hands, for example, virtually, of course, then feel free to use the reactions. I'm honored to introduce our guest speaker for today, Shruthi Sepuri. Shruthi, please share your screen and feel free to say a few words about yourself before we begin the session.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen. There you go. Can you confirm, Ronan, if you're able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. It's all prepared.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Shruthi Sepuri. I'm a QA lead at Tata Consultancy Services. And for the past few years, my work has been specifically in the AI and data systems. And when I say in them, I don't mean from an architecture or strategy perspective. I mean from the quality and testing side. So, which means I am the person on the team who asks the most uncomfortable questions, like the person who says, okay, this looks great in the demo, but what actually happens when it lands in the production and real users starts throwing the real data at it? And what happens when the input change in ways we did not anticipate, like what happens when something fails in a way what like that nobody wrote a test case for. And I work specifically in the insurance domain, which if you have spent any time in the regulated industry, you already know it is one of the most compliance heavy, audit conscious, like legally sensitive environments you can possibly operate an AI system in. So every single decision the system makes can have a real consequence for a user or for a business. So a premium that goes up, and a claim that gets assessed a certain way, a coverage decision that affects someone's life in a meaningful way. So governance for my team, it is not just a theoretical decision or discussion that happens in a slide deck. It's something we deal with in very concrete, practical terms every single day. So, and over the last few years, specifically, a big part of my work has shifted towards Gen AI, like generative AI, like how you validate it, how you generate meaningful test coverage for outputs that are inherently non-deterministic, and how you handle the failure modes that start showing up when you move these systems from prototype into full enterprise scale production. And what that work has taught me more than anything else is that the gap between a promising AI prototype and genuinely production ready system is not usually a technical gap. Like the technology is largely there, like the tooling is maturing fast. The real gap, the one that creates the most problems is a governance gap. And the more specifically, it's a gap between the governance that exists on paper and governance that actually operates inside the running system. And in my opinion, those two things, it turns out, are very different from each other. So before I get into the content, I want to ask you all something, just react or something like I would genuinely love for you to just sit with this honest for a second. Um, Rather than like reaching for a comfortable answer, just sit with it. Like, does your organization have AI governance in place? Like really in place, like for example, the policies, the frameworks, the documentations, the approval processes, like these things, like you would feel confident saying yes. Yeah.
Since a voice or the chat, they can use the Q&A, but I gave you a small tweak. Let's use the reaction. So everyone that do have it in their organization, you can use the reaction, and let's say that you will use the laugh. And everyone
Yeah.
that do not have can use the smile. So
Yeah.
this is like a trick. Oh, I see
Yes.
smile, it's meaning this person does not have it. No one have it. I'm looking for some love.
Yeah, thanks, Ronan. Yeah, that's a great way. So yeah, now, I mean, it's okay. So ask yourself the second question. You can just you don't have to react, but just ask and sit with it. If I asked you right now, which version of the prompt template was actively running in your production AI system at let's say 2 o'clock last Tuesday, or I mean, could you tell me that exactly? I know it's a bit confusing, or you wouldn't be able to tell me precisely. So a slight less comfortable pause than the first one, right? So that pause, like that moment of if ever someone asked me, I would be like, actually, I am genuinely not sure about that one. And that is exactly the space this session is designed to explore. So, because what I've seen consistently across enterprise environments, across different tech stacks or like industries, is that organizations have invested really genuinely in building documentations of what governance should look like. And what hasn't been built yet, in most cases, is governance that actually runs, like governance that operates inside the system in real time during execution, when decisions are actually being made, when outputs are actually being generated. And those things, like documenting governance intent versus like enforcing governance behavior, I believe those are very different things. And the distance between them is where most of the real AI risk actually lives. So that's what the session is for. I'm going to walk you through why this breaks in production, specifically, not just in a general sense. I would introduce some concepts I think will give you a genuinely different frame of looking at the problem. And I'll leave you with something practical, something you can actually bring it back to your teams next week and have a conversation about. So, all right, let's get into it. So, yeah, let me start with something I have seen play out in enterprise environments so many times that it's honestly become a recognizable pattern for me. So, and I'm also very confident that as I describe it, a lot of you are going to find it familiar too. So here's how it typically goes. A team decides to deploy an AI system, and they genuinely, thoughtfully do everything right up front. They write a thorough governance policy. They go through the architecture review process. They get the appropriate sign-offs from the stakeholders across the businesses, and they complete the compliance checklist. And they go through every single, like every proper approval process, and then they deploy the system. And from that moment, like governance is considered done. Like it's been completed. Like it's the task that has been ticked off and moved to the done column on the board, and everybody moves on onto the next sprint. And that works absolutely fine, honestly, right up until the moment it does not. Like until an output surprises somebody, until an auditor sends over a formal request for documentation, until a stakeholder sits down in a meeting and asks, wait, why exactly did that system produce that output? And the team goes to find the answer, and what they discover is that they genuinely cannot fully explain it anymore. Like the documentation describes what the system was supposed to do when it first launched, but it does not describe what it's doing right now today, after all the changes they have quietly accumulated over the months since they went live. And after the prompts got tweaked, or like let's say the data refreshed, the model upgraded, and the integrations extended. So that gap, that space between was what was documented and what is actually happening, is what I call the governance illusion. And it's really specific kind of illusion, which is the belief that that because governance happened before deployment, it's something still actively in place, like that the work done at the gate continues to hold the system accountable out in production, like indefinitely, without any active maintenance. So let's look at the three things that most organizations point to when they say they have governance in place, because I think each of them is valuable, like genuinely valuable. But each of them also has a specific and important limitation that becomes really challenging in production AI. So the first one is policy documentation. And I want to be really precise here because this distinction matters more than it might initially seem. Like policy documentation describes intent behavior. Like it says, here is a standard. Like here is how we expect our AI systems to behave in the world, or here is the commitment we are making. And I think that is genuinely valuable work. I'm absolutely not dismissing it. Documenting intent is important. It is going to give something to anchor governance conversations to. But policy documentation, like it cannot intercept a runtime call. Like it cannot at all at the exact moment a prompt executes, looks at look at what's happening and say, hold on, the that outside that is outside the boundary we set. So it describes what should happen, and it says nothing at all about what does happen. And and those are completely different things, right? So documentation describes intent. Enforcement is what governance actually means in practice. And the way I think about it from a testing background, imagine you have spent weeks writing a beautifully comprehensive test plan. Every scenario, like every edge case, every acceptance criteria documented in detail, but then you never actually, sorry, is there any questions?
No, there are no
Okay.
questions this time.
Okay, yeah. So, but then you never actually executes the test. Like the test plan sits there, thorough and carefully written, but no test run ever happens. So, like, does a plan tell you, like, whether the system works? Not at all, right? Like, it just tells you what should be verified. Without the execution, like, it proves nothing about whether the system actually behaves correctly. And I think the same logic applies directly to the governance policy documents. Like the policy is a test plan, runtime governance enforcement is the time test execution, and most organizations have put enormous amount of effort into the test plan and very little into building the execution layer. So yeah, and the second thing I have here is the access controls, like IAM, RBAC, and all of the identity and permission management that organizations invest heavily in. And again, these are absolutely necessary. Please keep doing this. But access controls answers a very specific and narrow question, like which is who is authorized to run this system? And that's a genuinely important question, but it's not the same question as what did the system actually do once it ran? Like what data did it access? Or what logic did it apply? Or what outputs did it produce? And were those outputs appropriately given the context? So, who has access and what actually happened are two completely different questions. And most governance frameworks spend almost all of their energy on the first one and very little on the second, in my opinion. And the third one we have is approval gates. pre-deployment reviews like architecture sign-offs, the checkpoint processes that run before a system ships. And once again, like these are important, valuable, necessary, but here is a fundamental limitation of an approval gate. Like it is a snapshot. It says at this specific moment in time, this system has been reviewed by these people and deemed acceptable. And that statement is accurate for that moment. But it says nothing about the system as it will exist after 6 months of evolution in the production. Like after the model gets retrained and behavior shifts, after someone updates the prompt template to handle a new edge case, after the vector index gets rebuilt with a new embedding model, like after the data set refreshes and the distribution of values change, or after a new integration gets added. So every one of those things happens after the gate closes, and none of them automatically triggers a return to the gate. So the approval that was given, that careful, thoughtful, well documented approval, is frozen in time while the system keeps moving. And so the principle I want to anchor everything in today, and like if you write one thing down in this session, I would want it to be this sentence on the screen, that is, governance exists only where decisions are enforced, not where they are documenting. So if your governance lives in the policy documents and approval records and compliance frameworks, you have documentation. Like documentations has real value. But documentation is not governance. Like governance is active, it enforces, like it observes what's happening in real time. But governance can tell you what the system actually did. It is not just what it was supposed to do. And the journey from documentation to genuine runtime governance, that's the thing the session is really about. So yeah, let's get into the specifics now, because I think this is where it becomes genuinely useful. Not just agreeing that governance is hard, but understanding exactly why it fails, like in structural terms, in let's say in the production AI systems. And I want to approach this way. I approach most quality problems, like which is by asking what is the actual or exact root cause, not the symptom or not the observation that governance breaks down over time, but the specific concrete structural reason why it breaks. Because if you understand the root cause clearly, you can engineer the solution that actually addresses it rather than just patching over it. So there are 5 structural failure modes I want to walk through, which is on the screen. And I have framed each one deliberately with both the technical root cause and the governance risk it creates. Because I want you to able to bring this back to your engineering teams and your governance conversations in concrete terms. So the first one we have is dynamic data set drift. And yeah, so here's a scenario that I've seen play out in different forms across a number of enterprise environments. A team builds a model, tests it thoroughly against a well-documented and well-understood data set. Like it runs through the full governance review process. It gets all the appropriate approvals and deploys it to the production. And at that moment, at that point, genuinely, everything is in good shape. Like the governance record is solid, the documentation is complete, and the system is working as intended. And then 6 months goes by, and the underlying data set refreshes, like automatically as it was designed to do. And the schema is completely identical, like same column names, same data types, same structure, like nothing in the metadata has changed. But the distribution of values inside those columns has shifted. Like what was once a strong reliable predictive signal has now become noisy and unreliable. So a category that used to represent 15% of the records now represent only like 40%. Like the underlying meaning of the data has changed, even though the shape of the data looks exactly the same. And here's the governance problem. Like the problem, like the framework has no mechanism to detect this at all. Like it was written against a fixed snapshot of the data, and it assumes that what was approved is still what's being used. But that assumption is, I think, is no longer true. And the accuracy degradation that follows does not trigger any alert. Like nobody receives a ticket, nobody gets a notification. The model just quietly begins behaving differently, and like for reasons that are completely invisible to the governance layer. And in an insurance environment, like insurance industries, where models are informing real decisions that affect real businesses, that kind of silence, like undetected drift, can have real consequences for a very long time before anyone even realizes like something has changed. So yeah, and the second one is RAG retrieval opacity, and this is the one I find particularly interesting from a quality engineering perspective, because it introduces non-determinism, like in a place where most teams genuinely are not expected to find it. Like retrieval, like RAG retrieval augmented generation, like it is an incredible powerful capability, right? Like being able to ground your model outputs in your actual enterprise data, which is a significant unlock. And also it's changed what's possible with enterprise AI in a meaningful ways, right? But here is what is actually happening underneath the surface. The most governance frameworks have not caught up with yet. Like vector store retrieval, which is non-deterministic. The exact same query runs twice against this exact same index, can return different chunks like of outputs. Like it returns on the current state of the index, the version of the embedding model that was used to build it, the re-ranker configuration, and in some architectures, even the load on the system at that particular moment. Yeah, and like which means the same prompt can produce meaningfully different answers on different calls. And there is no record, like no trace, no log entry, no audit event anywhere in the system, like of which specific chunks influenced which output. And like if I were trying to design test coverage for this as a QA engineer, I couldn't write a deterministic expected result. Like the expected result is a function of variables that the governance frameworks currently cannot observe. And that is a fundamental quality and governance gap, especially in a regulated context where you need to be able to reproduce and explain any specific decision in response to an inquiry or an audit. So the yeah, and the third one here we have is mutation. And I want to spend a moment on this one because I think it's the failure mode that surprises teams most when they really sit and think through its implications. Like a prompt template, and this reframing that I think is really important. So a prompt template is not just a string of text, but it's a behavioral specification for the model. Like it is an instruction set that tells the model how to interpret the inputs it receives, what personas to maintain, what constraints to operate within, what it will do, and what it absolutely will not do. So when you change the prompt, you have changed the whole system, like not in a minor configuration sense, like in a fundamental behavioral sense. Like the system will act differently, like it will produce different outputs. You have shipped new behavior. And here is a critical problem. Like prompt changes have essentially zero deployments overhead, like in most enterprise environments. Like someone on the teams can open the configuration file, edit the template, commit the changes, and have a completely different production behavior running within minutes. Like there is no deployment pipeline to go through, no change review to trigger, no impact assessment to complete, or no approval workflow to invoke, no governance event emitted anywhere in the system. The behavior of the production system changed, and nothing at all recorded that it happened. And from a QA perspective, that is an untested release, like a behavior change with no test coverage, no record, or like no audit trail, no record of who made it or what was the reasoning behind it. And that kind of invisible, ungoverned change is exactly what becomes a very difficult conversation when an auditor comes asking questions about a specific decision the system made. So the fourth one here is continuous model evolution. And this one has an added layer of difficulty, which is that it's largely outside your direct control. Like your model provider updates their weights, sometimes transparently with full change logs, or sometimes with minimal notice. Like your fine tuning cycles completes, and a new checkpoints gets prompted. The alignment behavior shifts, the refusal pattern changes, and the way the model handles ambiguous edge cases evolves. So the factual recall patterns, this pattern updates, and critically, none of that is automatically gated through your governance review. So the model that your governance review reviewed and approved when you first launched the system may genuinely not be the model running in the production system right now today. And in most organizations, there is no mechanism in place to detect that gap, let alone document it and respond to it. And the fifth one is magnetic execution chains. And I think this is the one that existing governance frameworks are least prepared for, and also the direction that enterprise AI is moving towards fastest, that is multi-agent systems, frameworks where one AI orchestrates several others, where workflow evolves 20 or 30 sequential tool calls, um, where each decision depends on and builds upon the output of the one before it. So this sequence. So the governance was fundamentally designed for atomic request response, like one request, like one input arrives, one output is produced. Like there's one interaction to receive and like review and verify. But when you have an agent chain making 30 sequential or compounding decisions with no human checkpoints between step 1 and step 30, like no natural pause point where governance can evaluate what has happened and decide whether to continue the process, like the governance model breaks down structurally. Like you cannot apply a pre-deployment approval gate to step 7 of an autonomous workflow that runs in milliseconds. And the risk compounds with every step in the chain, because each ungoverned decision becomes the input to the next one. And yeah, and the thing I really want to emphasize before we move on, these five failure models are not edge cases. These are not rare that happens to the unlucky teams that weren't careful enough. They are the normal everyday operating conditions of a modern AI platforms running in production. Like they are happening right now in real systems, like across organizations in every industry. And a governance framework that only operates at the point of deployment, that review the system once before it ships and then steps back, right? That structural cannot address a single one of them. So that is the mismatch we need to solve, and that is what the rest of the session is about. And moving on, um, Ronan, do you have any questions? Sorry.
I just wanted to ask you if there is another slide that you are talking about, and then you move to another slide, so it's good. I wasn't, because you spoke about steps, and the slide is not presented then. My mistake.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, before I get into the solution, I want to make sure I want to make sure we have a shared picture of what we are actually governing. Because in my experience, one of the things that makes governance conversations hard to make concrete is that different people in the room are imagining different systems. Like someone's thinking about the model layer, and someone else thinking about the platform layer, or like about the data pipeline. Someone else is thinking about the application APIs. And without a shared architecture to anchor the conversation, it is very difficult to say precisely where governance needs to live and exactly what it needs to do. So, let me walk through the reference architecture I use when I think about enterprise AI platforms. And I want to be clear upfront. This is completely vendor neutral, like it is not tied to any specific cloud providers. It's meant as a thinking framework rather than a perspective blueprint. So it has two sides, which is data plane on the left, which is where the actual data and the AI work happens. And on the right side, we have control plane, which is where the governance lives, operates, and enforce. So starting with the data plane, working top to bottom, L1, which is your external data sources, which is like databases, REST APIs, streaming event sources, object storage systems, SaaS connectors of various kinds. So this is the origin layer where your data actually comes from, from before anything else has touched it, right? And then we have the L2, which is ingestion and integration, like your, let's say, batch pipelines, change data capture through tools like Debezium or Kafka, streaming processing through Flink or Spark, and your schema registry sitting alongside all of it. So this is the layer where data enters your platform and starts to be shaped and validated. So L3, it is storage and compute. Your let's say lakehouse architecture built on on a Delta Lake or Apache Iceberg, like your data warehouses, your data mesh domain structures, like data mesh domain structures, if you have adopted that pattern. So this is where data is organized, stored in a queryable form, and made available for downstream assumptions. So yeah, and then L4, which is where things start to get specifically interesting and important for AI workloads. And I want to spend just a moment here because this layer is often underappreciated from a governance perspective, like your feature store, your vector databases, whether that's PG Vector or Pinecone or something else, like whatever, and critically your embedding registry. And this is the layer where raw data gets transformed into the representation that AI systems actually consume. And as we will see, like when we get the explainability supply chain, this layer creates some of the most significant governance gaps if it is not instrumented properly. And then we have L5, which is inference and orchestration, like foundation model APIs, fine-tuned model endpoints, orchestration frameworks like LangChain or Llama Index, your agnostic workload frameworks. Like this is where reasoning happens, like where the AI actually, like where the AI actually does the thing it was built to do. So we have L6, which is your application and the servicing layer, like the REST, the gRPC APIs that expose model capabilities, the agent workflows, the Copilot interfaces, the batch scoring pipelines. Like this is where outputs reach actual users and downstream systems that start having real world consequences. And L4, which is sitting horizontally across the platform, across the bottom layer, which is your observability layer, like metrics, let's say metrics, traces, governance events, and audit logs. And I want to flag this layer specifically because it's often treated as an add-on rather than as a foundational infrastructure. But it's actually the layer that makes everything, like everything else, explainable when you need it to be. And for governance purposes, it's the layer that matters the most. So now on the right side is the control layer, control plane, the governance layer. So I want you to pay attention of how it's positioned in this diagram, in the slide, because the positioning is deliberate and meaningful. It does not sit above the stack doing reviews before systems deploy, or it does not sit below the stack, like receiving outputs passively after everything is done, but it connects horizontally across every single layer from L1 all the way through L7, and it is present at every point of execution throughout the entire platform. And within the control plane, you have five components that together make governance operational. First is the policy engine like OPA or CIDR, like that evaluates policy rules at the moment requests arrive, like in real time, but not at design time. And then we have a prompt registry that stores every prompt with its complete version history, authorship, approval records, and linked output samples. And a lineage graph built on open lineage or Marcuse that tracks the full data to a response chain continually and make it queryable at any point. And an approval orchestrator that makes risk tired gates and routes high risk decisions to human reviews before execution completes. And then governance telemetry, that is the structured event stream that flows from every layer in the data plane into an immutable append only audit record. So every layer here emits events into it continuously. It evaluates, it enforces, it records, and in real time on every governed request. And that is what transforms governance from a document that describes intent into a capability that actually operates. So now, I want to introduce what I genuinely believe is the most important conceptual framing in this entire session. And I want to say upfront, honestly, I have looked for this framing in the standard governance literature, and I have not found it articulated quite this way. It's not in the vendor white papers. It's not in the compliance frameworks. It comes from watching real AI systems evolve in production over time, like across real enterprise environments, and slowly recognizing a pattern that everyone I have spoken to has experienced, but has nobody has a clean name for. So I call it as governance debt. And actually, I'm genuinely curious if if you have ever heard this, just react, thumbs up or otherwise. So, I mean, you all know what technical debt is, right? And I think most people in this audience have felt at some point like that specific, slightly quizzy feeling when you're working on a code base that technically works. It does what it's supposed to do. Nobody's arguing that it's broken, but it's built on layers of shortcuts or workarounds and pragmatic decisions made like under deadline pressure, and nobody fully understands it anymore. And there are like no proper tests for the parts that matters the most. And you know that one day, probably at the worst possible moment, it's going to cause a problem that takes for longer to diagnose and fix than it ever could. So, and the insidious thing about technical debt, the thing that makes it genuinely dangerous is that it accumulates silently. Like like every shortcut goes into the ledger, every like we will clean this up later that never gets cleaned up. So every pragmatic workaround, like it compounds quietly and invisibly until it does not. So governance debt is that exact same thing, dynamically, compounding dynamically, applied not to your database, like to your code base, but to your governance posture. And it has the same quiet accumulation pattern and the same tendency to become a very large problem precisely when you can least afford it. And I want to make the real and concrete explanation with 5 scenarios that I think represent the most common ways governance debt actually accumulates in enterprise environments. So, scenario one, your team is iterating on an AI assistant, which is completely normal and healthy. Fast iteration, like it is exactly what good teams do. And the prompt template that moves from version 1 to version 4, someone on the team made an adjustment, like refined the tone slightly, added a specific instruction for handling an edge case that keeps coming up in testing. Like it felt minor at that point, not something that warranted a formal change process. So there was no ticket raised, like no approval record created, no documentation of who made the change or what was the reasoning behind it. And then 6 months later, a user raises a concern about an output that seems problematic in some way, and the team goes to reconstruct that system, like why it was behaving in a specific way, and they discover that they genuinely cannot tell anyone who changed the prompt, what exactly changed between version 3 and version 4. Like the author is unknown, the reasoning is gone, and the system has been running under a behavioral specification that nobody can fully account for. Like that felt like a minor inconsequential change at the moment that was when it was made, but 6 months later it's significant and uncomfortable problem during an audit. So that is the first, and the second is the your data set refreshes every 30 days on an automated schedule, right? We all have that. And each time it refreshes, the schema is identical, like same column names, same types, same structures, nobody in the metadata, like nothing in the metadata looks different. And because the schema is the same, the automated pipelines treat it as as a routine refresh. Like no revalidation is triggered, no governance event is emitted. Everything looks normal from a pipeline health perspective, but the distribution of values inside those columns has shifted meaningfully. Like the model is now operating on data that no longer resembles, like in any meaningful statistical sense, the data it was tested and reviewed against at launch. So the verification that was done so carefully before deployment that governance review, those test results no longer reflect the reality of what's flowing through the system. And nobody in the organizations knows this because nothing is watching for it, right? And scenario three, the team upgrades the embedding the models to a newer version. And this seems unambiguously positive, like better representation, improved retrieval quality, stronger semantic understanding, like all good things. But what has actually happened underneath is that the geometric space of the entire vector database has changed. Like the embedding that were built and indexed under the old model version are now in a different geometric space than the embedding being generated for a new queries under the new version. And the retrieval quality can degrade in ways that are subtle and hard to retrieve. And um, and there is no governance record of when this upgrade happened, and what the expected impact was, what validations was performed after the change, or who authorized it. That is the problem. And the scenario 4, during a proof of concept, a legitimate, well-intentioned project with genuine business value, a service account was granted broad read access to the data platforms. The POCs wrapped up, it was declared a success, or it was decommissioned, let's say, or simply it ended as a POCs do, and the service accounts access was supposed to be scoped back, right? Or it should be fully decommissioned where when the project ended. It wasn't. Like 8 months later, it's still there, completely untouched. With access, it has no legitimate reason to hold. And in a regulated environments, like in insurance specifically, that is like a compliance exposure that has been sitting quietly for 8 months, accumulating risk invisible to everyone. So, and we have in the scenario 5 a new tool node, let's say new tool node gets added to an existing agent workflow, like new data sources, new capabilities, something the team needs to support on evolving use case. And now three downstream decisions in every run of that workflow depends on output from this new model. But the tool was never reviewed as part of the governance frameworks for that workflow. So the workflow was reviewed when it was initially built. But this addition happened afterwards as an incremental change. And so three decisions per request are now effectively ungoverned, like working fine from a platform or performance standpoint, but completely invisible from a governance standpoint. And this is the thing I want to say as clearly as I possibly can, because I think it's the most important insight in this session. Like governance debt is completely invisible to your performance. Monitoring stack, like accuracy can be 94%, latency excellent, like error rate essentially zero, and auditability can be zero at the same time. Those numbers like do not correlate with each other, like that they are measuring entirely different dimensions of your system's health. And most organizations, most teams doing genuinely good work are only measuring one of those and assuming the other one is fine. And so one day the question arrived that your monitoring stack was never designed to answer. Like a regulator sends a formal request, or auditor needs to understand a specific decision of a model. A legal challenge requires you to reconstruct the complete lineage of a specific output, and you go to the audit trial and it is empty, like or like partial, or let's say present but not connected to the artifacts or versions and approval records you need to actually answer the question. And that is the moment when governance debt stops being an abstract concept about technical hygiene and start being a very concrete, expensive, and urgent problem. So I would suggest do not wait for that moment to begin measuring it. So, all right. So quick one for the chart. I mean, it's okay. Just react if you when I say AI explainability. What's the very first thing that comes to your mind? Like, um, I mean, it could be um, someone could. I mean, I have had a survey, and those answers were like sharp values, lime, feature importance scores, or like attention visualizations. Like these are real, valuable, well documented techniques, and they absolutely have a place in a serious AI quality practice. I use them specifically and I recommend them. But here is what I've learned from several years of actually testing production AI systems in regulated environments, like environments where you genuinely have to be able to explain decisions to auditors, like to regulators, sometimes to lawyers. Like when something goes wrong in a real production system and someone asks you to explain a specific output, like model level explainability, which was almost never which will never gives you the complete answer on its own, right? Because the model is just one node in a much longer chain, and the output you're trying to explain was shaped by every single node in that chain, not just the last one, not just the most visible one. And this is what I call the explainability supply chain, and I want to share it as a mental model because in my experience it fundamentally changed the way you think about what needs to be instrumented and why. So we have 8 notes, and the standard I work toward, and the standard I would encourage you to hold yourself to, is that every single one of those nodes needs to be able to produce a structured queryable audit record that is linked to every other node by a common trace ID. So let me walk through each one. Source data, starting at very beginning of the chain, was this data actually licensed for this specific use case? Like in an insurance context, like the provenance of source data is not just a best practice, it's like a legal regulated requirement in many jurisdictions. And if you cannot answer those questions, like the questions that are on screen, confidently and completely, the explainability chain is already broken before you have done a single thing with the data. So yeah, and then we have transformation and ETL. The once the data enters your platform, it goes through transformation logic before anything downstream sees it. So the questions is that transformation logic versioned in a way that lets you reconstruct exactly what it was doing at any point in time? Is a lineage being captured through DPT, through open lineage, through whatever tooling you're using? Like these questions. If someone can modify a transformation script without creating a version record, you cannot explain what the data actually looked like by the time it reached the model. And that gap enormously when you need to reconstruct the inputs to a specific decision. So the third one, feature engineering, that has each feature been tested for drift over time. So you would know if its statistical properties have changed since it was validated. Like the or the can the feature engineering logic be modified without triggering a review process? And next one is like an embedding model. The questions is the version pinned explicitly and documented? And critically, if it was upgraded even to a minor version pump, is there a change event in the audit log that records that it happened, when it happened, when it moved from and to, and what validation was done to confirm the change was safe? So these questions, because if that record does not exist, the geometrical space of your vector database changed at some point, and nobody can tell you when or what downstream effects were, right? And then we have vector index. Like what was the specific build time frames or the timestamps of the index version that answered this particular query, or what were the chunk boundaries? How was the source content divided and indexed? And is the index version explicitly tied to the specific request in the audit trace? Like without those three pieces, you cannot reproduce the retrieval. Like you cannot recreate the exact condition that produces specific output. And in a world where regulator and legal reproducibility is a requirement, that I feel like it is a serious gap. And then we have a prompt template, like the version that was active, the author, the approver, the date of approval, and specifically what changed between the previous version and this one, and what was the reasoning. All of it needs to be present, linked, and queryable. Because if you cannot answer those questions for the prompt that was running during any given output, you cannot fully explain the system's behavior at the point. So, full stop. And LLM call, that is the provider version, temperature setting, all parameter configurations, and importantly, these needs to be logged at the per request level, like not just at the deployment level, because those parameters can do vary between calls, like and the difference between a temperature of zero point 0.1 and a temperature of zero point 0.9 can be genuinely meaningfully difference in the nature of output it produces. So response and output, and finally, one unified audit record that links this specific response by its unique ID to every upstream artifacts, like prompt version ID, version index version ID, dataset version ID, model version ID, approval ID, if one was required. So all of it connected is one queryable, traceable record. And so here is the test I would encourage you to actually try. Pick any output your AI system produced in the last 2 weeks, a specific one, and try to answer these questions, like which prompt version was active, which index version was queried, which dataset version was in use, which model version generated the output, or like, because wherever that gap is, that is your explainability problem. So, and now you know precisely what needs to be built to close it. So, and then now we have observability. And like, this is the concept this audience genuinely knows deeply. I believe you have invested in it. You have built it into your platforms, like metrics, traces, logs, APM dashboards, SLO frameworks, like distributed tracing. Like, you understand why it matters, and you have seen firsthand what happens to systems that don't have it, right? So it's foundational infrastructure for any serious engineering practice. So I want to be specific about what I mean on the slide when I say governance state, because it's different from system state. System state tells you how the system is performing. Is it fast? Is it healthy? Or like, are the error rates acceptable? These kind of things. And governance state tells you something completely different, like whether the right version of the right artifact was active at the right time, whether the right policy was evaluated and enforced, or whether the right audit record was actually written, or whether any human approval was supposed to happen, like actually happened and got documented in a way you can, you can retrieve these kind of. And measuring governance state requires like completely different signals from the ones you use to measure like the system's performance, like different schemas, different retentions, different consumers, different purposes. And I think of governance observability as having three distinct signal types, like built conceptually on the same three pillar foundation as your existing observability practice, but serving foundationally different purpose. So on the slide, we have governance metrics, which are the dimensions that need to be tagged on every single governed request. And I want to emphasize every single one, not a sample or not a subset, like the prompt version ID, model version, dataset version, approval ID, and like for approval ID for high risk decisions. And these are not optional like enrichment fields, right? These are not attributes you add when you have a space cycles. So without them, your audit store is not queryable by artifact version. You cannot ask the system like show me every decision that was made under prompt version, let's say 3.2.1 during the regulatory review period. You cannot correlate governance events to the specific version of specific artifacts that were active at like specific moments. And these fields are what makes the difference between governance data that's logged and governance data that's actually auditable and actionable. So, and then we have governance traces like links that links the complete execution chain through a single shared trace ID, source query, retrieval call, prompt resolution, model interference, audit record, and it has a different schema from your APM trace, like different retention requirements or different access controls or different consumers, but the same underlying pattern, like one ID that threads through an entire chain of events and makes them queryable as a unified picture. So that is the governance traces, and we have governance events, which are structured records which are emitted at each point where a governance decision is made, where something is allowed, blocked, or escalated or audited. Like each record captures who made the decision, who is responsible, or what resource was involved, and what version of that resource was active, and what the output was. So yeah, I'll show you the full schema in a couple of slides, and I think it's the most immediately actionable thing in this session. So yeah, and we have some numbers on the slide. So I share those numbers not to make anyone in the room feel uncomfortable like about where they are, because honestly they reflect where most organizations are. They reflect real conversations across real engineering and governance teams. And the consistent pattern is that most teams have invested genuinely and thoughtfully in application observability. Most teams have strong APM practices, but almost none of them have governance observability as a separately designed, separately instrumented, separately maintained signal layer. And the principle that follows from this is straightforward. If you cannot observe governance state, you cannot govern. Like governance that is not observable is not operational. It's called aspirational. And when the hard question comes, it's not a sufficient answer. So, mhm.
Just notice the time we need to come to the end. And by the way, I really like the sentence you said before. So really good.
Sure. Yeah, I'll quickly wrap up with the solution. Um, so yeah. We have 8 controls, like because I want to leave you with something concrete and that you can take back to your team. Like one is data contracts, which is enforced at schema registry, breaking changes blocked, quality SLA breaches, emit governance events like drift detection via PSI scores. And next is like prompt registry, like every production prompt versioned and approval gated. And three is retrieval validation. And fourth is like the risk tiered approvals, like tier 1 proceeds automatically, tier 2 logged and sampled, tier 3 halted and routes to the human reviewer with SLA classification and at intake. That is fourth. And fifth is like governance telemetry, like trace IDs, source IDs, resource version, policy ID, and these things. And sixth is human escalation paths. You know what exactly it means. And seven is end-to-end lineage, which is open lineage event from source throughout through transformation, like feature embedding, prompt interference to response. And eighth is like risk-based monitoring, high risk per call, mid-risk sampled, and you cannot, when like monitoring config itself is version, so you cannot silently reduce coverage. And the metrics that ties all of this together is your trust score, the percentage of production AI decisions with a complete linked queryable governance event trial, like define it, measure it, I would say track it and set a floor when it drops. Like when it drops, investigate. And that's your governance health metrics. But it is not a compliance score. And the actual percentage of decisions you can fully explain and trace, that's the number that matters. And I have one last slide, which is interesting and which I want you to take back to your team. If you want to screenshot one thing today from this session, make it this one. And the headline is simple, like APM and governance observability are not the same thing. Your APM stack answers, like why is it the system slow or broken right now? So yeah, same trace ID connecting the two, completely separate stories, like never commingle them. So the governance event schema, a few fields worth calling out specifically is a trace ID that links your governance records to your APM record. Same UUID, so you can correlate governance evidence with performance context for the exact same thing. And resource ID and resource version, which are like prompt registry, like version 3.2.1. This is what your audit store queryable. And policy ID and policy version, because policy change, and when an audit asks what rules were active when this decision was made, you need to point to a specific version, not our current policy. Not, you cannot just say our current policy. And then we have approval ID, that is links the audit trial to a specific human who made the specific decision at a specific time. So this answers who authorized this. And then we have immutable true, that is append only. It cannot be modified after writing. That property is what makes it audit evidence rather than just a log. And the practical difference, those audit questions from earlier became 5-second queries instead of multi-day investigation. So that's the whole point of this session. And I have a couple of takeaways. Um, so you can see it here. So if governance only exists in documents, governance does not exist. and you can, like, it is not measurable, and it cannot answer the prompt version questions that you have governed. Second is the future of governance is runtime decision management. And three is governance debt is invisible in your monitoring stack. And fourth is explainability is a supply chain property, not a model property. Fifth is trust decay, which is a distinct risk category that requires its own dedicated metrics. So define a trust score, give it a measure, give it a number, measure it, track it on the dashboard alongside your performance metrics. Set a floor that reflects your regulatory environment and your organization's risk appetite. And when it drops below the tool, treat it as an incident, like raise it, respond to it, investigate it. And because your system can be performing at 94% accuracy and simultaneously failing governance, and you need a number that captures that reality. So with this, I close. And yeah, I hope something in the session was genuinely useful, useful in a practical way that shows up in your work next week. That's always what I'm aiming for. And thank you. If you have any questions, you can drop it now.
I will actually change the settings. So if someone wants to speak, if you have a question, you can put your hand up virtually, and then you can use your microphone. Let me just change the setting, but I think that it was very clear. And you can use your camera for the closer. We can see your face, anyone that wants. And I do want to mention one more point for the speaker. So, Shruthi, if you want, you can send me the presentation. It can be a PowerPoint file or a PDF, and we will upload it to the community. We have a GitHub that everyone can go and see. So they can go through the session in addition to the recording. Okay, so just let me show my screen just to close, and thanks everyone. Again, I want to thank our speaker, Shruthi Sepuri, for a great session, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I remind you all to register to the next meeting. Next week, we don't have a meeting. Just follow our website and the best tool that you like, Meetup, Eventbrite, but our website is the best place to follow. And thanks again for being here. If there are no more questions, we will close the session for today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for attending.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.